Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to be doing a watercolor tutorial based on this book, Watercolor Techniques by Zoltan Szabo. And we're going to be doing this ocean scene. The link to this book is in the description. So I hope you can order this book and we can go step by step through it. And I've made it a little easier. This requires absolutely no experience necessary, and I'm going to slowly take you step by step, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, here we are, and I want to make sure you have everything. Okay, you have water to drink, and you have your paper that's taped down on all edges so that when it gets wet, it stays flat. You have your brushes. You have your water bottle. You have a palette knife or two, or a regular knife. You have your paper towels and rags. You have a palette. You have your paints. And then you have 2 things of water, because you want to have a dirty jar of water and a clean jar. So you use the first jar to rinse your brush out, and then the second jar to make sure that that brush is clean. And you can blot it too before you put it in the water. All right, the first thing we do, we're going to have this, we're going to be doing an ocean scene. And this is the copy of the ocean scene we're doing. Okay. All right, and we're going to go step by step so that everyone is doing it at the same time. If you decide to go ahead of the game, then you will be responsible for the consequences. I have had people in my class go ahead and do what they want, and they don't know what they're doing. And then they end up getting mad because they didn't listen to directions. If you have painted before, that's fine. Then just have fun. All right. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to water down our paper. Now the rough side is facing up. The rough side's facing up. And you either water your paper with a water bottle or your brush. If you don't have a big brush like this, I'm sorry I didn't put it on the list because you're not going to need it very much. You spread that water out so that it's smooth on there, and you can use one of your bigger brushes to smooth that water out. Okay. We're going to mix some paint because the colors are not necessarily as dark as we need them. There's this indigo color that's really dark here. See, indigo. So I'm going to mix some, get some water and pour it on your, just pour a little bit on your palette, just a tiny bit. You want to have enough where you're mixing a lot of pigment, and just get in there with your brush and get a lot of pigment and mix that in the center, because this is where we're going to be doing needing a lot more. Now the indigo is even darker than this. I'm thinking I mean, you could mix a little black with it to make it darker, or sometimes purple works. Yeah. So if you mix some purple in there, that's pretty good. If you have a scrap piece of paper, try to test it out. Okay. Test that out and see how dark you got it. I actually want it to be a little more bluer and darker, so I'm going to add a little bit more, and I'm going to add a little bit of black here. Yeah, that looks really good. You want to get kind of an indigo color, okay? And you want it to be pretty strong. Like, don't get it so watery that it's going to be diluted. You know, kind of have it be a thick milk color consistency, a thick milk consistency here. All right, so we have our sky here, and what I want is you to do is really start brushing this, add some water to get it to where it's going to spread out. Now this paper is not very good, I gotta say. Get your round brush and add it to here and put some blue on there. Try to make it really pigmented here. And try to copy this first. There you go. So we're going to have this, and use as much as you can here because it's going to dry lighter. Watercolor dries lighter. Okay. Okay, once you have that, blot your brush on your pad or your rag, and then clean it out and make sure you do a double cleaning with that second jar. Okay, has a little bit of green right here, just a little bit, so add a little bit of green here. Okay. All right. So what I want you to do is take your water and spray. And get those colors to blend. You can blot if it's doing too much. But you want to be able to have those colors kind of swirl around. Right now we're having a stormy time at the beach. It's stormy. Okay. Now when you get it to where you think it's gonna look pretty good, now don't add so much water that it dilutes it. too much. You want to be able to just get some things moving and kind of swirling around, making. So you do it towards the bottom. You want that top to be pretty dark. Now this is where we need our blow dryer, because we have this really wet canvas and we don't want to wait 2 hours. Okay, so this is the one that's going to take a while, just for time purposes. Everyone take the time and blow dry your artwork. Now you can use your sponges that you got. You can use your sponges that you got and blot things. Make some designs here. Blot up some of that excess. And you can always wipe things a little bit. This paper is more like canvas. All right, so get your blow dryer. Start out far away so that you don't blow the paint everywhere. And then as it dries, you can get closer. Now the paper's really wrinkled. And when it starts to dry, it's going to get more taut. It's going to get tighter. So keep blow drying it until those wrinkles go away and it gets flat. And that you see that it's getting lighter as it's getting drier. Getting flatter. Now this paper isn't the best. I'm working with what you guys have. There's really different kinds of paper, and it really makes a difference to get good quality paper. But I'm showing you techniques now, and if you want better paper and better supplies, just let me know. I have a link on my website for suggestions on some better quality paints. All right, so this is looking pretty dry. Okay, so make sure you have pressed down the tape again. So now we are at this place where we have created our sky. And now we need to use our masking tape. This tape that you taped down, if you have some extra tape, now is the time to press some tape onto the canvas. We need to establish our horizon line. Okay. And you are going to place your tape where this edge down here, the bottom edge, is about 1/3 up from the top, 1/3 up from the top. And, you know, get it as straight as you can and press down pretty hard. Okay. Now we have blue indigo with some aqua going on. The colors on this are not as true to what it is. I'm going to mix the color I have with some green, and we're going to make kind of an aqua. We always want to use the paint we've already mixed and try to kind of be resourceful with what we have. Okay. And then you test that out. Well, that's a little dark. Well, maybe that's okay. If it's a little dark, you can add water, and that will dilute it a little bit and make it lighter. I'm using this lighter green. Okay. I think that's pretty good. So what you do is you draw a line going across, and don't get it too wet because it might go under that. But you want to kind of do a line here. And then bring some up here, and there's some green added to that, some light greenish yellow. So get your light green and some yellow. Mix the light green and yellow and just kind of get some here going. Now this is where we need to fade this shoreline into the horizon, and it's kind of fading off. So just get your water, clean off your brush, get it clean, and just get water and smooth that out. Just kind of smooth it out like it's fading off into the distance. Fading. You kind of want to blend this edge out so that it looks like it's kind of mist of the water. And you can blot things with paper towel to make them whiter. So I'm kind of just softening that edge up there, adding more water, softening the edge so it looks like a shoreline. And then before we remove the tape, there's some kind of grayish areas that we want to put on here. And so I wanted us to get really diluted gray. Just add more water and kind of dilute that here. And use more water than paint. Okay. All right, now use your blow dryer if you want. And slowly remove the tape. Look at that horizon line there. Looks pretty cool, huh? Now's the part that's going to take a little while. What I want you to do is clean off this center with a paper towel. And you don't have to clean it that well because we're going to be adding brown and it's not going to show. So get your bigger brush. And we have rock textures in it. You know, sepia is about the best. I think this right next to the black is a really dark sepia. And so put a lot of pigment down. Make sure you have some water in there. And we're going to be mixing a lot of paint because we want to be able to scrape it and put it on our palette knife or our regular knife. Now, this color, there's some orange tones in there. So if you want, you can get another brush and not dirty up your orange. It's kind of like a yellow ochre here that you can mix in. To give it a little bit more of a warmer tone. Even adding some orange. And, you know, this is just experimenting. You know, there's no hard, fast rules. You do want to keep the values correct. The darkness is pretty important. Test it on a piece of paper and see if that's the color you need. Okay, so I have quite a bit of pigment here. And I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to kind of lay it on here with the brush like this. You want to kind of get pretty thick. So, there you go. Now, you just use some strokes here and use your palette knife or your knife and just go alongside looking at the edges here and create rocks with your palette knife. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're not sitting there right now. This is not a class where you're sitting here. I have to get everything perfect as far as this goes. Okay, so I'm just going along the edge. I'm putting more paint on the back of my palette so that it has enough, and it's not so thin and that it just starts running. It's pretty, it's kind of like a milk consistency. And I go off and I do this and create pretty much what I see, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so what I have here is I have a new edge here. And these are in the forefront. And I can go in with my brush, my flat square one. And can make some textures with that. Use your flat brush to create these rocks. Now you have this area here. So I'm just making some shapes here with my flat brush. You can scrape down with your palette knife, like with a better paper. It works better. And then we have this scraping and making just kind of rough edges on the bottom. Now get your clean brush, a round brush, and you can go and start adding some water here and blending this bottom part. Kind of blend that out. And you can even add puddles of water so that it kind of looks like it's blending the surface. Just blend. And this is where you can, kind of add some of that yellow ochre in there. Just add this yellow ochre. And then use your water again and kind of blend that white away. Yeah. And this is just a matter of experimenting. Don't work it too much, because the problem with a lot of paintings is we work them too much and then it turns to mud, right? So kind of just add some more things, some details. Use your water again, blend. There's some yellows. Right here, using this. You want to take your brush and blot it to where it's dry, and then you can do some kind of dry strokes here. Just kind of use that brush and do some dry strokes. So we have our rocks, and you want to just keep working what you can. Don't work it too much to blend, and you can blot. Make sure your brush is really clean. Try to blot to where it looks like there's ocean. Now, one thing that you can do to make this look a little more washed is take your spray bottle, and don't get this top edge, but kind of get this bottom edge. And you can kind of use your palette knife to kind of move that water around, move it down. Okay. And once you have it the way you want it. Now I made a mistake here. You just take your water and you can blot that right away. Okay, so if you feel like you have everything the way you want it, you can go back and darken these things, these areas, if you have it, if it's too light. And you can add some more pigment by blotting. Kind of create some crevice areas. But keep this straight edge here so it looks like there's some layers of rocks here. All right. At this point, you can use the blow dryer to dry it. All right. This has dried lighter. If you actually want to go in after it's dry and just get a little bit of your pigment and redefine some of these areas, or you can make some rough areas. There's wet on wet techniques. There's wet on dry techniques. You can go back and start creating some textures with your brush. If you pull these apart like this, you have some paint on there, and then you can do some kind of rough textures like rock. Okay, and you can go back in and kind of put some rocky textures in there with your brush. Just pull these apart like that. And this is a dry brush technique. That way you're getting some of those textures that you like. You can put, you know, darker color in there if you want. You want to blot so that all right. You can still go back and smooth things out if you want. Lift, you can kind of even lift color using your brush. Keep blotting. If you've made a mistake, you can use water and your brush to lift pigment and blot things away. Okay. All right. And you can go back and add some tones, some lighter tones to it. Like I said, you don't want to overdo it. Use your spray bottle a little bit. You should have your rocks done. If you want to add more detail, you can do that. Like I said, it dries lighter. But just keep experimenting, adding some texture. Don't get too, you know, loosen up just loosen up and have fun. Okay. You want to put a little color in it, you can do that and then kind of blend the edges. Okay. And you can blot to kind of lighten things. Okay. So whatever works for you. This is just having fun. All right, we have completed step 3. Let's go to step 4. This is the foreground. So mix permanent rose and yellow and a touch of sepia. Okay, so the closest thing to permanent rose, I think, is this one right here. This one. Put it in your little cup. And yellow. Make sure that this is clean. Okay, you want to mix in, you want to make kind of a warm colored sand. So you don't want that much pink. I mean, you want more yellow than pink, just a little bit. I'm going to just start over here and get some yellow. More. Actually, this is a really good color here. Take your largest flat brush, and actually there's a number of brushes here that have texture to them. Let's try these out here. Wet your brush first, and then go along those rocks. And remember, like, if you get this apart, then you can get some rough areas, like right here. That doesn't even work very well here. I'm gonna blot it and make it drier. Yeah, I'm not really liking that. I actually like that other one better. This one. Yeah, so you get some dry areas. wet this whole area. If you want to mix a little brown, you can do that. Do some dry brush techniques along the sand here. Now, to get the darker part, while it's still wet, go and get that dark brown and even some left over from here, and touch this area while it's still wet and kind of put it right here. Add some things so that it's blending when it dries. So you have a darker shore coming up. Okay. And if you want to lighten things up, remember you can wet your brush, kind of blend and blot, blend and blot. Here, you're using, oh, I just dipped my brush in my water, drinking water. You can add a little more yellow to this. Okay. Now we have blended this. You can also use the round brush with a lot of water. Kind of make some areas here. And blend it like this. Now you can use the blow dryer, but we're just going to go on to another part that's not wet, and then because we really don't need to go back to this anymore. And like I said, this is just a time of having fun. All right. Step 5. We're on the last step. Okay, there's a few more greens and other things going on in the picture, as well as there's this island way out here. Okay, so to add interest to the long straight horizon line, paint a small island in the distance. It adds balance to the composition and acts as a blocker, preventing the eye from wandering out of the composition. Use a mixture of burnt sienna, blue, and permanent rose. You don't necessarily have to do this. This, actually, what's left over looks pretty close. So why don't we do that? What's great about watercolors, you just add water and reconstitutes. Check the value on your scrap. That looks pretty good. And then go along with,
I would go with maybe a smaller brush. Maybe this one. This brush here. And then I'll very carefully along this line, make kind of a sloped kind of island, you know, like you're painting Catalina. And remember, things off in the distance are lighter than things that are in the forefront because of atmosphere. So you don't want to make this that dark. You just want to give the impression that it's there. And you can even clear out your brush and blot it, and then you can kind of lift some paint off to lighten it up a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of a little island out there in the distance. We have some things that clean off your brush, and then let's kind of get green here. It's kind of a greenish gray. But it's really light, which means it's watery. So you want to be where it looks kind of like this. It's really a lot watery. It has hardly any pigment in it. And then you want to go along and kind of create some of that rough wave stuff. I just, for me, I want you guys to have fun, and I want you to be able to just not be afraid of watercolor. Watercolor does its own thing a lot of times, and sometimes you want to be able to have something where if you're like trying to control your life all the time and trying to control the outcome of things, sometimes just sitting down to watercolor and just letting it do its thing can be very relaxing. Just letting it do what it's going to do, dry how it's going to dry, you know, just have fun. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, this paint isn't the best. I'm thinking this is too orange. See this? So I'm gonna get rid of that, and I'm going to put a little more of a sand color in here. better. Okay. Right now we have little tiny birds, really super tiny, and actually they're really light because they're in the distance. You can hardly see them. So what we're going to do is get some of that blue that you had that was in the sky, mix a little blue and black together. And you can draw little tiny, really little tiny birds. And then you can go and blot them to make them less noticeable. And, you know, you're just doing weird V's here. It's not, see how it's hardly showing, but they look like they're off in the distance. This one is really light. So I'm adding water to it, and I'm just going there. And there's some in the distance here. Yeah, so you can even add a little bit more blue to the wash, kind of blend that in there. This sky needs a little more green in it, I think. A lot of times I don't do just one layer. I'm glazing, which means I'm adding layers after it's dry. To add more effects. And sometimes you can stand this up, let it kind of bleed down the paper a little bit. Okay, so I think we're done. All right, I think we're done. Before you quit, I want you to sign your artwork. So a true artist signs their work after they're done. I had such a hard time with this when I started doing more fine art because I had always worked for a company at Disney, and I wasn't doing my own work. I was doing other people's. So then when I started doing my own work, I I really felt insecure signing. I don't know why it was, but now I'm telling people, sign your work. That is the sign of a true artist. And it's really hard to sign it with a paintbrush. I wouldn't recommend it. A lot of times people get one of those micro pens, a permanent micro pen. This isn't one of them, or a pencil. Pencil's fine. And then you sign it and be high enough to where it's not going to cut off when they mat the frame. So I sign it up here. And then let's do the big reveal, because this green tape makes everything look ugly. Now pull away from your work. Make sure you're pulling away so that it does not tear the paper. Okay. Pull away, pull away. All right. Goodbye tape. Look at the difference when you are when you have that tape gone. So that's just a beginner little seascape, and I hope you had a really good time. And I hope this took away all the fear that a lot of times watercolor does, because it definitely takes some techniques to work it out, but it's a lot of fun. Okay, so I hope you have fun, and I hope this was a great time for you. Okay, goodbye.